It says, and I would argue that Romans is really trying to say that grace, the concept of grace, which is meted out to all human beings, but not necessarily acknowledged or accepted by all human beings, but it doesn't really matter anyway. Grace means that nothing can separate us from God. So why do we feel so separate? I'm going to ask you 3 non-rhetorical questions in this sermon, and that's number 1. Why do we feel so separate? If this thing is true, right? If God is real and God's full intention is for us to feel connected to one another and to God, if that's actually the case, then what the hell?
I feel like we don't hear God over our own negative chatter that we have.
We don't hear God over our own negative chatter. Separation is often our experience, and separation from others in particular. Sure. What else? I saw another hand.
Well, I was going to say, well, Matt, what you were saying, that if you don't understand something, you know, right, and you're like, you God, and you're like,
Mhm. And so there's a choice, there's a behavior, something that helps to elucidate that, and maybe we're not making that choice all the time. You know, it's funny, in mindful self-compassion, we don't say, I feel separate and that's not true. I'm actually one. We say, I am one with everyone in that I feel separate. And that's a really different thing. It's not trying to negate the experience. It's trying to say that that experience of separateness, aloneness, no one understands me, no one gets me, my life is unique and distinct. It's true. And so is everyone else's. We are one in our separateness. We are one in our uniqueness, in our particularness. Which is only slightly comforting, right? Because here we are still feeling separate, still feeling like we're not connected, still feeling like God is still absent, but we're all feeling that. And when I start thinking about it that way, I'm like, oh, okay. So what? Well, I've come to this conclusion that feels arbitrary, and it feels like a decision. And my decision is, if I exist, then I am loved. If I exist at all, if I have being, if I have consciousness, even if I am unconscious, I am loved because I am. And if God is love, then I am loved, period. And I don't have to debate it, but I can't prove it, I just have to decide it on some level. If I exist, I am loved. But then we get to this piece of scripture where he says, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know how to pray as we ought. Tell me about what y'all know about shouldn't.
We shouldn't use it.
It covers a lot of territory. Tell me about what you personally know about shouldn't. I shouldn't. You hear it pointed at you. You shouldn't X. Sure. It causes guilt.
We're saying it to ourselves, and we're saying it to ourselves because it's something we want to do. We're kind of telling them, don't do it.
Right.
Do it.
The tyranny of the shoulds. it's so easy to live in a should or shouldn't? Say it again? It's black and white. It's got clarity to it, right? It's clean.
Well, also it means you don't have to figure out yourself what you feel is right or wrong for yourself in your heart and for other people if you have authorities deciding that for you.
Sure, and authorities don't have to be external, right? Most of our authorities are internal, right?
It's been going on for thousands of years. The Ten Commandments, thou shalt and thou shalt not. And we all grew up with that kind of ideology.
Sure.
They were cutting edge at the time, though.
That's right. Eye for an eye was actually limiting retribution, because it was, oh, you throw rocks at me, it's time for missiles, right? Sure. We internalize those messages and they become part of us. Well, it gives you a sense of control, right? I mean, I think ultimately, right, what we're aiming for with a should or a shouldn't is a sense of control in otherwise what seems like a totally out of control world and experience. Raising kids will really remind you how very little control you have and how much you desire it and how you think if you just exert a lot of authority and force, you can make something happen. Say it again? Or kittens, yes. Yeah, good luck with that. Little fluffy balls of razors. Right? So when Paul says all things work together for those who love God, there's an undermining of a should or a shouldn't in that. What if every feeling you had worked for the love of God? Even the times that you feel really shitty. Even when you feel betrayed about something. Even when you feel deeply disappointed. Even when you feel judgmental. What if all of those feelings were not a thing that you should or shouldn't feel, but they just were part of reality and moving you towards God? What would that take? Because here's the thing that happens, right? I feel this. Well, I don't want to feel this. Matter of fact, I shouldn't feel this. And then we very easily get into, there's something wrong with me because I feel this. And what if we just said, I feel this, and that's just true?
Or I give myself permission.
I give myself permission to feel this. I feel this. And then we get to that place of, I don't want to feel this, but I do.
That's the stopping point.
Right? Because then if I get to, I shouldn't feel this, but actually, I do.
Just think of your feeling, especially if it's one that you don't want, as a 6-year-old that needs a hug and needs to be acknowledged.
Sure, it just needs to be acknowledged. Sure. I think sometimes, though, one of the things I teach my son about is he gets overwhelmed by his feelings. And I talk about feelings are a hallway, and you do actually have to go through the hallway to get into the next room. And if you're mad that you're in the hallway, you're still in the hallway. And if you think you shouldn't be in the hallway, well, guess what? Here you are, still in the hallway. But once you accept that's where I am, and I just have to go through it, it just is, then it can be transformed. Then it can resolve. In the kind of science place, we talk about completing the stress cycle. But so often we don't complete the stress cycle because we're trying to manage and control our feelings. We're trying to say, we shouldn't feel this way, therefore I'm going to pretend that I don't feel this way, and I'm going to seethe in my feeling, right? We're like a bonfire that we bury on the beach, and then the next day somebody walks over it and burns themselves because it's still burning underneath the sand. We just covered it up and pretended that it wasn't there, and it's not smoking anymore, so it's fine. But days later it'll still be there, burning slowly until it catches something on fire, until the wind blows enough to move the sand away and reveal the feeling that's there. Something that has nothing to do with whatever you were feeling, but now you are the target of all of this shit that I brought to the situation.
Not to forget the numbing that we do.
Sure, which is another way of just checking out of the feeling. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you know, when you're in that place of restriction, resistance,
And that's what Brene Brown says about differentiating between stress and overwhelm. Stress is something that you can do something about, but when you're feeling overwhelmed, the only thing you can do for overwhelm is nothing. The only thing that will help you deal with a feeling of real overwhelm is to do nothing. And just allow yourself to be, because hustling and moving is only going to continue that feeling that it's coming too fast. Stress is something you can manage and move through, but overwhelm is something you just have to do nothing about. But we shouldn't do nothing, should we? We should always be hustling and striving and doing and moving and solving and fixing and creating and managing and getting through and denying, suppressing, right? But if you exist, then you are loved. And if you are loved, you are worthy of care. Just by the fact of your existence. The rock is worthy of being appreciated because it's a rock. Because it's beautiful inherently, even if it's completely gray and bland. It's still absolutely amazing. It's still the product of millions of years of development and evolution and change and transformation, and it is still completely unique, and there is never another rock like it, even if you thought there was, because you just didn't look at it. You didn't hold and behold before you released it. The most transformational question we can ask ourselves when we're in this state of agitation and anxiety and fear and so forth is not what should I do or how should I feel, which is of course obviously a judgment. It's what do I need? What? I'd say even before we get to how can I give, we ask ourselves, what do I need? How do you feel about needing things? Hate it. Do you want to say it just a little bit more?
I want to be always the one that can do everything and don't need any help. Because that's my image of what I should be like.
How do the rest of you feel about needing things? Ambivalent? Say a little bit more, if you would. It's hard to admit you would need something. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Go ahead.
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed by need.
Don't know where to get what I need.
don't know where to get what you need. And if you don't know where to get it, maybe you shouldn't need it.
Well, no, you're stuck.
You're just stuck. Yeah.
One of the distinguishers between need and desire.
Say a little bit more.
Well, I don't need a slice of bread, and I desire a slice of French bread that is baked a certain way.
Sure. Our particulars versus our essentials. Right. Because everything essential, we can have a particular way of it, right? But if I give you the choice of black coffee or coffee with cream in it, some of you will pick one and some of you will pick the other. But then if I give you the choice of the full suite of the Starbucks experience, very few of you will pick the two things that I laid out first, right? Well, that's a whole other, that's just a metaphor, that's a whole other conversation. Go ahead.
To me, a need is the lack of dependence. If you need something, you're dependent on somebody else or something else. That's what I have.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could have asked the question differently and said, how do you feel about being dependent? Because that's really what we mean by need. I need this, I am dependent upon this, I require this. So often we take the things that we actually need and we put them in the want category because we're not sure they're going to get met. We'll say, oh, I don't need that. That's just the thing that I want. I think we do that a lot more often than we go the other direction. We're afraid our need won't be met, and so what if it's just not a need? If I don't really need to feel respected in my marriage, I don't really need that. I mean, other people don't have that, and they're doing just fine. What if I don't really need to be able to say what I really think to a friend or a coworker? I mean, it's not necessary, it's not perfect, it's fine. Right? And then it sits there as an unmet need in us. But we shouldn't need that, right? If you exist, you are loved. And if you are loved, you are worthy of having your needs met. Mm, 78% of Americans are better at giving compassion to other people than they are at giving it to themselves. Which means 78% of us have a growing edge of being able to be compassionate towards ourselves. The vast majority of us are not very good at this. That in and of itself is a liberating conclusion. Because in your uniqueness and struggle, you're just like everybody else. And grace is about letting go of how it should be and how we should act and how we should think and how this should work, and just saying it is, and because it is, it's worthy of care. There's three basic statements that are kind of the suite of mindful self-compassion at its root. And I love that there's three things up here because I'm going to point at them and pretend that those things are related because that's fun. The first one is, there is suffering. I feel these feelings. Maybe they're doubt, shame, fear, disappointment, betrayal, frustration, judgment, whatever. They just are. There is a God, and a God has created a universe that has existed for trillions of years, and it just is. It doesn't have any judgment, it just exists. And it has, and it will continue to. It just is. And the second component of mindful self-compassion is, and this is a human experience, this feeling I'm having. This suffering is part of being a person. My sense of aloneness, my sense of fear and doubt and disappointment and betrayal and so forth, those are part of being human. We have a God who sent his Son into the world that he might share in that experience with us, that he might be human with us, that he might suffer with us and know what that is to suffer and to show up and to care for his friends and to make family out of all of us. It is, and it's part of being human, and it is worthy of compassion. Whatever I'm feeling, it's worthy of my care, because it is. We have the Spirit who intercedes for us when we know not how to pray as we ought, because we think there is a way that we ought to pray, and we're not doing it. That's the trick. It's not as if the Spirit says you ought to pray in a certain way. It's that I say I ought to pray in a certain way, and I'm not doing that. I am screwing this up. I am the reason my prayers aren't being answered. I am the problem. And the Spirit intercedes and says, I love you, but you really missed the point. The point is that I love you. The point is that I want you to love you. The point is that you're worthy because you exist. What would it take for you to just start doing that a little bit more frequently? Just say to yourself, this that I'm feeling, this is suffering. And suffering is a part of being human. Will I be kind to myself?